Sundays have always been sacred to me. It gives me a chance to spend time with my family, with my friends, to focus on my faith. And honestly, We Rest on Sundays is a platform that I've created to help you navigate the complexities of the world. I want to spend time having open, honest dialogue with mentors, friends and family, and individuals that I truly believe are exceptional. We're going to focus on love, career, marriage, parenting, and everything in between. And the primary goal here is for us to become the better versions of ourselves every single day. I want to thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on Sunday. Sabaah, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. I'm so happy that you're here today. And obviously, I met you through mutual friend Tyler, who's married to my line brother Shaka. And you played basketball with her, in college at Columbia. And I was always fascinated and really captivated, really just by your story and your journey. I've shared a little bit more about like mine and my niece, my nephew that are playing pretty high, pretty competitive basketball right now. And I see a lot of my niece in both you and Tyler. So I'm like, like I think I was worried where I'm like, well, she might go to a PWI and it's just going to be like a Clemson or, not too overly concerned, but I think it's cool that knowing y'all playing at an Ivy and, doing all of these great things within your career, which I know that we're going to get into today. But I'm just excited because I am dabbling in the space that you have already made a career out of. So I'm excited to hear more about your journey, but in your own words, tell me who Sabaah is.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be a guest on your podcast. Who Sabaah is, that's a big, big question. I'm a filmmaker, an artist. I'm an advocate for the things and the people that I believe in, for social justice. And I'm also just, a Black woman trying to survive in this world.
Yeah.
First and foremost, really.
No, it's good. It's really good. So tell me more about like your story of your journey, born and raised. I know you spent some time in Hawaii, some time in California. Get us caught up on really just the foundational years.
Yeah. I think I would preface this by just shouting out to my mom, hey mom. She was the cycle breaker
Mm.
of my family. So she wanted to raise me in a way that was very, very different from what she'd experienced, which maybe folks will get to learn her story one day. But so when my parents split up when I was 4, my mom decided to move me to Hawaii. We lived in the inner city in LA, and she wanted me to have a different outlook, a different foundation from what was around us. So we moved to Hawaii. We lived there from when I was like 4 to 8 years old. We lived off the grid. We caught rainwater. We
Mm.
had solar power. Like it was a really, really, really different life, totally different lifestyle. And the thing I remember, well, one of the things I remember most is just having community from all over the world, because Hawaii is a place that attracts tourists and travelers and all different types of seekers and people who are interested in nature and interested in holistic lifestyles. And so I had a really diverse early life because of that. And when I was 8 years old, we moved back to LA. I think for my mom, it was kind of being stir crazy because it is an island and she is an artist and a very social person and connected person. So I think that it was time to just be back in the city that had more to offer. And that time and that transition really, really shaped me because I had been homeschooled in Hawaii by my mom. I started public school when I got to LA, and I immediately noticed the segregation that was there. It was so different from what I was used to. All the Black people were in one area, we were in one school. I could see, even my young mind at the time, you can already start to recognize economic markers. And so I began to be curious about these differences and curious about why we were separated and curious about why people like me seem to only have certain spaces and certain opportunities available.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And what were the ages that you were in Hawaii and then that you pivoted back to LA?
So we moved to Hawaii in 94. I was born in 1990. So we moved to Hawaii in 94. I was 4 years old. Then we moved back to LA in like 98. So it would have been 8. So those 4 years, um, we were in Hawaii, and then outside of that, Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's wow, that's amazing. So what types of like what was your foundational educational background? Was it private, public school? What did that look like for you?
So it started out, like I said, homeschooled while we were in Hawaii. Then I went to public school. In LA, I went to 54th Street and Baldwin Hills Elementary School. What's up, Mr. Billups? Um, and because I came in homeschooled, I think anybody who gets a certain amount of individualized attention in their education is going to excel differently when you're getting it in a group environment. So I started out ahead of the curve. I was already reading ahead of the curve. I was doing math ahead of the curve. I was having critical conversations because I was just around my mom and around older people and people of all ages from a young age. And so I just kind of started out while I was in public school. I was that gifted kid. And so I would be in the gifted program and I would go to the upper class, classrooms for my math and for different things. And, I really appreciate my teachers that I had at those public schools and those inner city schools because they went above and beyond to make sure that me and students like me who were ready for extra challenges had those opportunities and had those tools and were kind of able to work at their capacity. They put in extra work to do that, and I think that kind of prepared me. Then in the 7th grade I went to private school for the
Mm,
first time, and that was like a whole entire paradigm shift.
yeah, and talk more about that shift, right, from public to private and like what did that do to you personally? Did you still excel academically? Was there a difference in social classes? Like what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I mean, huge, huge, huge difference in social classes. Huge difference in social classes. I was taking the public city bus from 41st and Figueroa, which is where I live, which if you know that part of LA, is South Central. And I was taking 2 buses up to 3rd and Rossmore, which is where my private all girls high school, middle school was at, which is like Hancock Park, which is one of LA's most prestigious neighborhoods. And so, that was already a shell shock. That was already like a tale of two worlds for me. And I began to understand, the haves and the have nots close up. And I think one of the biggest lessons I took from that contrast was just realizing that, and we talked a little bit about this, that like there's nobody more talented than Black folks. There's nobody more intelligent. There's nobody more charismatic. There's nobody with more to offer and more to naturally give than our folks. To me personally, it's just a matter of environment and opportunity, what you're exposed to, what you feel entitled to. You know what I mean? What you believe is for you, the messages that you're receiving from the people around you and the environment around you. That's the only thing for me that's separating students at my public school and the students that I went to private school with. And you would probably look and see dramatically different outcomes if you looked at their lives, you looked at that class of students. But having been in both, I can say that there's no difference in the caliber of people and the talent and the potential that's there. So yeah, I mean, I kind of started out behind the curve. I kind of went into it a gifted student, never having felt really, really challenged academically, always feeling like this hunger for more when it came to my education. And then I got to private school and there were just certain things that I didn't know. There was like study skills that I didn't have. I remember having to make an outline of a textbook and turn in the outline to show that we had done the reading. I didn't know what an outline was. I had never like needed to engage with the text that deeply because I had never been challenged with those expectations. And so there are a few different situations like that. And I think I spent a lot of that first year connecting with the teachers who were compassionate toward me to catch up. And once I did catch up, I would say I definitely began to excel again. But I think that, how do I say this? It was a really big deal at my high school, my private high school, to that they made room for students from different zip codes. That was like one of the phrases used. They have all of these type of
Yeah.
coded languages that they have for folks like us, different zip codes, disadvantaged, underprivileged, all of these different things. And so it was a point of pride for the school. They raised a lot of money every year for scholarships like the one that I benefited from. And I was very grateful for that, and I am very grateful for that. And at the same time, it's an interesting feeling to be the person from the zip code.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to be overhearing that conversation and knowing that it's about you. Um, and so, yeah, I think that sort of colored the way that the teacher saw me. I think it colored the way the administration saw me. I was always in the office about, am I struggling? Do I have what it takes? Should I be taking all the advanced classes I've signed up for? There was this kind of like feeling like almost like folks were waiting for me to fail or just not expecting me. Like it was just it was such a stark contrast from being the gifted student at the public school in the inner city that everybody's betting on.
Yep.
Everybody's hopes and dreams are riding on you. Then to go into this new environment and all of a sudden you're facing tremendous doubt.
Yep.
It created, I think, it intensified I don't know what the right word for it is, but just that spark that I saw when I first realized, okay, we live in a segregated city. We live in an unequal city. Then it started to feel personal once I became on the receiving end of all of this doubt from teachers and administrators. And I'm like, I know I'm not the student that people are worried about. Like that's not, that's never been me. Like I don't even know what y'all are talking about. And so I think that's what motivated me to ultimately be an independent artist. I think I would have had to be some type of entrepreneur or independent person. And I think that it's a good option for a lot of us, depending on how you respond to challenges, depending on how you respond to being doubted, depending on how you respond to being seen or not being seen. It could be a good option because I've found that I have a lot more energy and fuel when I'm focused on what I'm good at and what I'm passionate about than when I'm focused on trying to prove people wrong.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. You actually challenged me a little bit. Honestly, you have me in my bag of, thinking deeply on, self-reflecting is what I will say. Because I would like to say that I am typically fueled by the naysayers and the doubters because I feel like my back has always been against the wall because I've always been the kid, not until I got to Morehouse, right, in HBCU. But every other school that I went to in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin was like, oh, like the charity case, oh, expecting you to fail. And it's like, well, no, like I'm going to figure this stuff out. I'm going to work really hard to make it all make sense. So I appreciate you sharing that more than you know because it just helps me probably process through a little bit more like the trauma that I'm still holding on to from my own experience. But let's talk a little bit about like before we jump into career on your end, basketball as well because you also played at Columbia and you played in high school. Can you just share more about that journey for you? How did you land at Columbia? Right, like it's a powerful story knowing that you came into this private elite private school and struggled for a little bit, but then clearly caught up and had to excel to get into Columbia. So what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So yeah, I started playing basketball kind of on a whim because I was always tall. I am tall. And all my friends played basketball, but I was a theater kid. Like I was always that art kid. Any medium I could get my hands on, I was a part of and I did well at. But there was this one year and it was some musical. I can't remember what musical it was, but I just didn't really want to do a musical. I didn't think that I was gonna be good at it. Like I just didn't have that excitement to do this musical. And so I was like, let me play basketball instead.
Wow. That was just
It
random.
was just random.
Wow.
And when you're tall, like people are always pestering you to play sports. So the coaches had made it clear that if I wanted to play basketball, they would welcome me. So I started out on JV. I had never bounced the ball before. I mean, I was absolutely terrible. I had effort, I had height, and that's about it. And that was a really good challenge for me because it was one of the first things that I did that really did not come naturally to me,
Mm,
where I really had to dig deep and I really had to work and I had to like work in front of people and be vulnerable in front of people and like be in my weaknesses in front of a group of people. And, you know, I learned about the support of a team and just that presence and people who care about what you're doing are pushing you further. You're struggling together. I got to play with some incredible basketball players, Talia Caldwell,
Mm-hmm.
Abby Olajuwon, women who went on to play professionally. And by my sophomore year, I was on varsity. By my junior year, I was starting. We went to state. We were like, you know, we had won our league undefeated years and years in a row. So this was a really good team.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful for that opportunity because there's very few spaces in this world where you really get to measure your progress, where you really get to see hours you put in, points on the board.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And I think that that definitely shaped my personality, my willingness to work hard, my trust in the process, and my love of collaboration and my love of teamwork and feeling embraced in that environment and just like feeling that deep sense of sisterhood. I don't think I've had many other experiences that have created such deep bonds with other women.
Mm-hmm.
That's about really working hard and digging deep and being, you know, competitive and being strong. So yeah, I'm really glad that I had that experience.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And how did you like? So what was it then? Were you scholarship at Columbia when it came to basketball? Did you
Oh
make?
no no
Yeah.
no.
So talk to us about that as well.
Yeah. So I got in Columbia early decision academics only.
Mm,
And it was my first choice of school. I remember the counselor being like, that's going to be a reach for you. I was like, I didn't, again, I don't understand why anyone is doubting me. At that point, I had this still kind of naive self confidence in myself. So I was like, all right,
the
watch.
counselor said that to you.
Yeah. And which was a Black woman too. And that was kind of disappointing. But I think that she was really trying to, you know, statistically speaking, the entrance rates or whatever, the
Yeah,
rates of people they admit are low. So I think that she was trying to prepare me,
maybe mentally.
yeah, to just to be wise and kind of spread out my options. But I felt confident and I think a lot of people didn't understand either the things I was experiencing in the background of my education, where my education was not the most challenging thing on my plate
Yeah, yeah.
in high school. And so I wasn't as I had confidence in my ability to move forward through my education, that my education was going to be my way out of certain situations. So I got into Columbia early decision, off academics. I was pre-med, and they called me that spring, that summer, and asked me if I wanted to join the team. So I was like an invited walk-on,
Mm,
basically.
wow.
Yeah.
And sorry, were you scholarship at Columbia or no?
I did have a school full scholarship, but Ivy League schools actually don't offer academic scholarship. So many of them are quote unquote need blind. So my scholarship was basically once you get admitted, you get funding based on
Got,
level of need.
got it. Didn't know that. And yeah, you just dropped another little peek into your life. So you started out being pre-med while at Columbia.
Hmm.
You're a writer and a filmmaker.
Yes.
So what happened?
Yeah. That was like this was like my big coming to Jesus moment. So I was pre-med. I always had a spirit for service, community service, giving back. I've always just cared about others and wanted other people to be well. And I also wanted that security piece and I wanted the lifestyles that I saw my peers having. And so I thought that medicine would give me the opportunity to do both of those things. Um, and funny enough, my brother was in college at the time. He played basketball at West Georgia. He got a severe injury and ended up doing his post-bac at the same time I was doing my undergrad in pre-med. So his physical therapy kind of inspired him to think about medicine. So we're kind of neck and neck now on this pre-med path. And I just remember noticing that he seemed like it was giving something back to him. Whereas for me, I felt very drained. I felt like I was pushing myself against the grain. It was again like every step of the way, people telling me like, "Are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you want to do this?" And I mean, the amount of people that started off pre-med at the beginning versus how many people actually finish that way, and then in particular the portion of people of color and Black students who finish pre-med. So it was a kind of a point of pride for me, to your point about wanting to, like prove, the naysayers wrong. It was a point of pride for me to stick that out. And I didn't really have any other plan. And creativity was, I think, the thing that I was best at and the thing that I kind of connected my identity to, but I associated it with struggle because I grew up in a community of incredibly brilliant, incredibly talented artists, and a lot of them struggled. And many of them, like 10 years later, like some of the folks that I grew up around, hanging out around, are huge household names to this day. But it took
Mm.
a lot of time for them to get up to that point. So, me not really having that vantage point of understanding the process, I'm thinking it's not realistic to be an artist. I have to find a real, stable, secure thing to do. And so, um, I was pushing against the grain. My junior year, I got two concussions
Mm.
within the space of like 2 months. Like, I got a concussion, knocked out for a month, came back, got another concussion almost immediately in practice from the same teammate.
Wow.
And so I, my doctor sat me down and was like, if you ever want to practice medicine, you can't continue to play basketball because if you get 3 concussions within a short period of time, there's a strong chance of severe brain damage. And so I and that was a revelation of an experience because I couldn't study the same way. I couldn't read for long periods of time. I couldn't use a computer for long periods of time. Like, I would get a headache from trying to process information. And so this was the first time that I ever really doubted myself academically and intellectually. And I started to ask myself, who are you if without this piece? You know what I mean? Who are you if you can't rely on this specific skill and subset? And I think I'm really, really grateful that that happened. I quit the team my senior year, and I spent that time just getting to know different people, trying out different classes, focusing more on my social life and trying to enjoy my experience more. And I think it just set the stage for, by the time I graduated, I think I kind of knew that I needed to find another avenue. I had done some clinical volunteering and I was like, this doesn't feel like the life I'm supposed to be living.
Mm.
And there was this little tiny seed of a creative dream. I was telling you, I imagined I was like on a typewriter writing up some manuscript and like someone would find it one day and discover me. And like I would end up in this, as a storyteller, as a filmmaker in some like magical way, but it wasn't a real thing. It was just kind of like a fantasy. And so I took the MCAT because, again, I didn't have no other plan. I didn't have any safety net whatsoever. And I started to explore public health. I started to work in nonprofits. Um, and I worked for an organization called the Osborne Association that does reentry for people who are currently and formerly incarcerated. So my role there, they wanted to become a trauma-informed organization. Um, so my role was to basically interview people, all their programs, all of their staff, to see where they were at when it comes to being trauma informed and make recommendations as to how they were going to get to their goal. And so I think I did over 200 interviews in the
Wow.
process. Yeah, and it was like this revelation because I've always been the person at the party that ends up like backed into a corner hearing someone's life story. And I'm like, I don't know why you're revealing all this information to me, but like, thank you. What else should we um, so this was the first time I'm like, oh, like people feel safe, people feel comfortable to share with me, and that's a gift and that's a huge blessing. And like when we're talking about trauma and PTSD, we're talking about like the stories that people are carrying with them
Yeah.
that's informing how they feel about their everyday lives and what things mean to them. And it just opened my eyes that there's this whole hidden world to each and every person, this whole hidden narrative that where you would never know unless you sit down and take the time to act.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, everything you just shared and some. Because like it's just the power of storytelling, right? And I think that like that's one facet of you that is very captivating. Is like you eventually pivoted out of the nonprofit space and really pursued creativity and really like storytelling, in my humble opinion. what gave you the confidence and how did you like what was the turning point where you're like, okay, I need to leave this space or I can leave this space or I'm going to leave this
Yeah,
nonprofit space to pursue these creative really just efforts.
yeah. Yeah, so it was 2014. I graduated 2013 from college. So this job that I got, there was a year-long contract on it. So summer 2014, similar, I mean, not as severe, but like we're seeing a big conflict between Israel and Palestine. Now we were seeing a huge conflict between Israel and Palestine in summer 2014. And that was kind of like my awakening to realize, oh, like nobody's coming to save us. Nobody's coming to fix this world.
Yep.
There's nobody here that's going to protect the most vulnerable. The things that we allow to happen collectively are the things that are going to happen. There's no, you know, world police or somebody third party neutral. Like nobody's coming to intervene. And so that really activated me. So when Mike Brown Jr. was killed on August 9th, 2014 in Ferguson, I was like, I have to go. And I had been, up until that point, I had been very active on social media
Mhm.
about the Israel conflict, or about the Palestine conflict, however you name it at this point. Um, and I had been really activated on social media, and I've been speaking out about just my ideas about justice, my ideas about power, naming the situation a genocide, which is something that I think is still up in the air today, but I think it'll one day be very clear based off of what we're seeing that this is a genocide taking place. And so people were responding to me. People were like, "Thank you for what you're sharing. Thank you for this message. I took this to heart. I had a conversation with my family member about this." And I was like, huh? Like at that time I really had no, I wasn't an internet personality. Like I really had no motive when I was speaking. I was literally just venting because I had all of this energy because I was seeing these things, these things. And so when I realized that my voice was having an impact on my immediate surroundings and Mike Brown Jr. was killed, I was like, I have to go here. Like I have to get more deeply involved. I can't just sit as a, armchair or social media warrior or whatever the case may be, which I think raising awareness on social media is important. I think it changes what we consider to be normal and acceptable, even if it's not moving the needle on the issues. I think it's moving the needle on our collective attitude to
Mhm.
things. But I wanted to go a step further. So I went there with my classmate Lucas Alvarado Ferrar, who became the cinematographer of the first documentary I made, Who Streets. And at that time, I was continuing the public health track. So I wanted to write a public health report to say that people and police facing off is going to have a long-term traumatic effect on this community. From putting people into fight or flight, putting people into battle mode is going to have physiological and psychological consequences on the community. And I wanted to go and show that. And so I had this questionnaire and it was like, how's your mood since the protest started? How's your appetite? Like, these different questions that are kind of assessing your mental health baseline. And it was like tear gas is flying everywhere. Police are attacking people. It was just not the time and place to be asking people about mood and appetite. So we kind of looked at each other. We're like, we just need to record this. And so we started asking people questions and we started filming. And we really quickly realized that there was an untold story, that what we were seeing on the news was just so counter to what we were experiencing, and that there was a huge historical, like, dragon's tail to the situation, that we were only seeing what was on the surface, what was on the front of it. So that inspired us to just go back and keep filming. It was really important for us to collaborate with people locally, so we connected with Damon Davis, who became the film's co-director, visual artist, born and raised in St. Louis. And from there, the moment where I decided I'm going creative, it was about a year later. I got a fellowship. We got a fellowship with this organization called Firelight Media, where I actually went on to be the interim director
Mhm.
of the fellowship program a few years ago. I just did that, but we got a fellowship from this organization called Firelight Media, and I think it was like $25,000 toward our budget, and we all paid ourselves like $1,500 or something.
Wow.
and I quit my job
Wow.
right then and there. And I think that, I had been looking for an excuse. I had been looking for a reason. I was looking for a path that was going to spark me. Um, in hindsight, would I have quit my job for $1,500? No, but at that time, it just felt like there can't be a plan B right now. Like I have to put every single thing into this. I have to not even consider an alternative. This is gonna work. I'm gonna make it work. Let's go.
That's yeah, that is captivating and amazing. What gave you that confidence? Or and really just like the confidence and like you were fearless, right? Because like the average person, you give them $1,500, you're like, okay, like I can pay my rent this month or whatever. Well, not even today, in 2025, but back then you could probably pay your rent, maybe a few bills. But like, what gave you the confidence of I, I'm not gonna give myself a plan B? Like, where did that come from?
Um, being in my 20s, if anyone's listening in your 20s, please take a risk on yourself. I think it's just a moment of time where there's a lot of goodwill out there for you if you're willing to take a risk and put things on the line. People don't mind helping you because you're a kid, and people are drawn to that fire and that passion and that effort. You're willing to do the things that other people are not willing to do, or they think the time has passed. And so there was just a lot of support around me, from friends, from family, from community. Like I had that sense again, that kind of how I had when I was a kid, but not so much about me being exceptional, but about people believing in me
Mm.
and being willing to show up for me. And that gave me a lot of faith and a lot of confidence. I don't believe in like, don't care what anybody says. I'm more of the mindset of find what resonates with your community, and you'll find that there's so many more resources available to you than what you would have if you were only purely focused on your own self.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great advice. So you landed that $25,000, was it a stipend? What
It
did you
was a grant for the whole the film
for,
budget. Yeah.
for everything
Yeah.
essentially? And y'all released Who Street? What year?
2017. So
2017.
another 2 years went before we actually finished the film. Yeah.
So you launch it and critically acclaimed, like y'all.
We went to Sundance. We got purchased by Magnolia Pictures. We did a theatrical. It's been moved through the various streaming platforms. I don't know where it's streaming now, but it's online. It's Magnolia has the rights to it, so they move it wherever their film properties go. But um, yeah, and I had a career on my hands at that point. I had all this experience. We ended up raising close to 7 figures for the budget, as well as the impact campaign that we did. We traveled to dozens of countries around the world with the film. We saw communities everywhere from South Africa, Turkey, the UK, and they had all experienced some form of the same police repression that folks had experienced in Ferguson. And we really started to understand how the different struggles are connected and the different stories are connected. And the oppression that we're resisting is the same
Yeah,
wherever you might find yourself on earth.
that's amazing. So it does well 2017. At that point, you're like, I got something. What was next?
Um, therapy. Therapy. You know, I still haven't become the person that is like think. Be. Um, my journey has become so much more about process than output. And when we went into making Who Streets, we thought we were going to change the world. We thought we were going to turn racism on its head.
Oh wow,
We were going to set the record straight once and for all.
everybody's gonna change.
You know what I mean? And I think for us, even as a social movement, like when Black Lives Matter was at its peak, there was this sensation that something historical was going to happen. And I think what we saw and what we see is the backlash to that. And what we see is the real depths of the roots of the problem, and how maybe it never was a misunderstanding. Maybe it wasn't about clarification. I think the film is extremely important because there's the evidence there, and we were able to witness that, and it lives on for people to continue to understand the power dynamics at play. But that was a tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
And making that film was more work than I've ever done in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's the thing that people don't understand when they say that they want to go into the creative life and want to be successful at it, is like there's an excitement period at the beginning, and then there's a whole lot of work. Like, you have to be totally unwilling to take no for an answer. It costs personal relationships. It costs a whole lot of sleep. And so when I finished the film, I finally took the opportunity to pursue therapy and to, it was like everything kind of caught up to me. I want
Yeah.
things even before college, all of that stuff that I carried with me, the whole experience of making this transition, thinking that I was going to have one outcome, and then really having to contend again with, reality.
Yeah.
So I took some time off. I started with therapy. I spent the next year after the film came out giving talks about the film and about topics relating to the film, and that's one of the ways that I was able to survive. And again, just really grateful to have the ability to connect and resonate with people about my journey and my experience. But it was another, let's see, it came out in 2018. Oh, what happened? Now that I think about it, I traveled, I was going around with the film, and then, yeah, I moved to Philly and I started on another project, which is actually going to be premiering in October. That's about the fight to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, because we don't actually have gender equality enshrined in our Constitution. It's kind of like you can discriminate based on gender if you feel like it. If you feel like it's really necessary, go ahead. Versus like race or religion or country of origin, where supposedly it's strictly banned to discriminate. Now, when we made that film, we could not have necessarily imagined how many
Mm-hmm.
of different people's constitutional rights would be disregarded. Um, but nevertheless, the film Ratified will be on independent lens this fall. That was the second project that I co-directed.
Got it. Wow. And then what about Look at Me as well?
So Look at Me, yes, that came through a classmate of mine. Shout out to Jelani. He knew my passion for mental health, and he connected me with XXXTentacion's estate and Fader magazine, who together were trying to work on a documentary about him. XXXTentacion, for anyone who doesn't know, huge rapper, blew up during the SoundCloud era, created a massive cult following,
Mm-hmm.
was canceled during the Me Too era for violent reviews of his intimate partner, and passed away. And this all happened before the age of 20 years old. And so why I decided to take on that project, I think that sometimes documentaries can fall into the category of either independent and artsy, and they tend to skew toward an audience that is older, that is whiter, that is more uh, read into a certain type of filmmaking, or we get documentaries that are more pop culture based, more celebrity based, sometimes they're crime based, but they tend to lack a certain amount of substance. And so for me, it was like, here's a topic that's highly, highly relevant. I know very, very young people are going to tune into this story. If I'm the person to tell this story, I can do so and do some justice to the survivor and do some honor to what really took place. And really happy that I was able to do that project, because so many people have come to me, survivors, saying that they saw themselves
Mm-hmm.
in the story. People who didn't know him saying they feel they understand him. Um, yeah, just a really good, necessary conversation about mental health, about partner violence, about society and what it expects of young men. So yeah, check that one out.
Yeah, like, and both of those are exceptional, right? And I didn't even like, I think it was probably, I don't, maybe like 6 months into knowing you. I didn't know that you created that. Like, I just didn't, I had no idea because, like you were you and you were just not going to put that in somebody's face. And then when I was like, because I watched both before knowing you, I was a huge, still am, XXX Tentacion fan beforehand. And I knew the whole journey. But watching it, like, even I remember seeing the trailer and I was like, oh, I've got to see this. So it's really cool bringing it full circle and actually getting to know you and understanding it. But can you share more of just, again, like you were pre-med in undergrad, and now you are literally creating some of, like the biggest projects, which I think bring more of our culture, I think, to the forefront of everybody, to the masses, right? Not just to us, our Black community, but really to everybody. So what is your creative process, and like how did you acquire these skills to go and like create these documentaries? And now I think you also have a Hulu deal. Can you talk about that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have to credit the basketball piece and the teamwork piece because going into that situation as an athlete where I was never the most experienced player on the court, um, but I always ended up finding myself in sort of a leadership role, team captain type of role, or just the person that I'm always bigging up my teammates. And I was such a student of the game in the process because I just really, really, I was going for most improved every other year. So I think that combination of humility and drive really, really lends itself to directing because I was never, and to this day, I'm still never the most experienced person on set.
Uh,
But I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable asking questions. Um, I think the ability to have a clear vision for something came innately to me. And, perhaps it may come for everybody. Perhaps that's how you know if you're meant to do this type of work. But like having that opinion, having that stance and that position, that is just a part of who I am. That's always been a part of who I am. Learning how to put people into place and create the container where that can be executed is something that, I just have really benefited from working with really, really generous collaborators who were able to balance respecting my vision with also supporting my lack of
mhm.
experience.
Yeah.
And so every single person I've worked with has been a teacher to me. And I think that that's such a huge blessing because we don't get to learn on the job. You know what I mean? We don't get to, we're usually over prepared and over qualified. So this is really a genuine situation where I had the opportunity to learn on the job. Um, the sacrifice was, my quality of life for a while there. The struggle was real, but there was always a trajectory to it. And I was willing to, I called that my sweat equity was like the things I sacrificed in my quality of life, trips I didn't take, parties I didn't go to, cool apartments I didn't live in. That was what I could invest in myself because there was no trust fund or anything else coming. And so, um, yeah, I just had to learn on the go.
Yeah, that's very real though, right? Like the whole, like the trust and the trust fund piece, and like the sweat equity, and like we before we got on camera, even today, you were like, "Well, y'all have any trips coming up?" And I was like, I sighed. I was like, "No, unfortunately." But it's like it's a season where it's like, no, we just got to have our head down, and we need to work and pursue the goal, and until we get to a point where we're like, all right, we're back to traveling and vacationing and all the things. So I think what you just shared is invaluable for the youth to hear, because sometimes, especially I think like with social media today, a lot of the challenges, like typically people are only putting on social media the top 5% moments of their lives, right? And not all of the mess of the other 95%. So I think what you just shared is invaluable for everybody, not just the youth, but everybody that's navigating, this area and, the challenges of life. Um, but I do have another follow-up question, just really revolving around like what advice would you give to, you know, the person that's hungry trying to become a writer or a director, or really just like a creative, right? Like, and it can be in anything. Because even for me myself, selfishly, I had shied away from my creative bug or feeling or skill or whatever it may have been for almost 20 years, if I'm being honest with you. I'm like, nah, it's like that's not gonna pay your bills, like corporate, corporate, corporate. But like, what's the advice that you would give to the person? Because you've like, I don't know, to me, I am still very amazed by your career, because you have these hits that kind of came out of like again, no film school yet, no additional like next level of whatever it may have been, but you created these amazing projects. But what advice would you give to that person that's really looking to step into or lean into their creative bug a little bit more and wants to become a director or wants to pursue writing?
Yeah, I think this has kind of become a cliche word, but I think authenticity is really it. I think that the reason I've been able to be successful is because whatever background or whatever may not be there, I have a strong and clear voice and understanding of who I am.
Mhm.
And that's been the thing that people have resonated with the most. And it's almost like it feels when you're being authentic, it feels like what did I say? What did I do? You know what I mean? Like you're not really doing anything. Like you're literally just showing up as you are. But it's easier said than done to show up in a room full of people and a pitch to an audience of 400 people and say, hey, I need $700,000 to do this project and say it with your chest. Like you have to kind of be connected to yourself and really self-aware in order to do that effectively. And I think I've been able to fundraise a lot for my projects and for myself, for my consulting business, for everything because I'm coming from where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
And so the concussions and the stuff that happened in college and that transition, that was all me finding my way back to myself and figuring out what are the things that are true to me, what are the things that are from the outside world, what are the things where I have something to prove, what are the things that are, and sometimes I wish like I was more of a city girl, like I was more like a unserious person who just wanted to talk about fashion. I do love fashion, but you know what I mean? I wish that like lighter topics came to my heart, but those aren't the things that get me up out of the bed day after day. Like what gets me up is really that I am furious about the way that powerful people abuse power. Like that will always, I can feel a charge just thinking about that. And so each one of us is going to be different. And if fashion is your thing, love that. You know what I mean? If aesthetics is your thing, love that. If pop culture is really your thing, love that. If you like numbers, you know what I mean? Whatever it is for you, going back to the question about like, proving the naysayers wrong, I think for me, that was not the correct path personally because I can't even say why. I just can't say that it never got me to where I was going. And that a lot of my best laid plans, when that was my motivation, didn't work out. But I'm curious to know how it's worked out for you because that might be a really good
Mhm.
motivation for you if that's been successful for you.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Yeah, for me, I mean, this is probably a toxic trait of mine, but I have used it as fuel for me. This is going to sound crazy, so give me grace, but this is the truth. Is like I keep a running list of naysayers in my brain at all times, and I check them off of my list, like for everything. Even when I think about my career and life and all of the things, like where I come from, the likelihood of me sitting here and interviewing you today is less than 1%. I'm confident in that. Like confident in that. Um, Only male college graduate on either my mother or my father's side of the family. Mom addicted to drugs, father in prison, all of the things, right? So it's like having an opportunity to sit in the seat, interview you, spend time, and all these other people that come on this platform. Like nobody would have guessed that. I was a person that people were concerned about, right? Like elementary, middle, high school, like, I don't know, is he going to be okay or is he going, and it's like, I just needed an opportunity. Like, get me out, let me get around our people and like, let me just like have a consistent meal. If I have that, I'll be all right with everything else. So I think for me, but again, to your point, like that's something I've also like worked through in therapy and like tried to also process through because like a little of that is toxic, right? Like I don't need to keep a running list of like people that, doubted me and all these other things. Cause like my life, I live a privileged life at this point. So like it's all good. So yeah, for me, that's how it's worked out on, on my end. But I also, I don't know, I try to just make sure that, that I stay balanced as well. Similar to a lot of things that you were sharing, where, I think what was really powerful that you're like, after Who Streets, you're like, I did therapy and like kind of just like took a break and worked on myself. I try to do that a lot of like just working on myself because, like you're gonna, you have one hit and two hit. So people now know you're a hit maker. So you'll sell a project, you'll get funding for a project, like that's easy. But like, is your entire package going to be healthy, and are you going to continue to show up as your authentic self? And I think for you, what you just shared to me, continue to challenge me is like the on the creative piece is like the authentic piece is everything. Those are the projects I love, like documentaries. I love drama, right? Because drama to me is like very close to reality, right? And like people's stories. That's my primary thing. That's what this is. Like, tell me your story. Because then I'm going to really know your heart, your character, what you're about, what you care for, where the direction of your life is going as well. So it's always just been really, really, I don't know, fascinating to hear more. And then people like you that bring it to life is like, again, amazing to me, where I'm like, okay, this is really, really cool. But yeah, so a few more questions for you. What do you really hope for people to walk away with, in the projects that you work on and that you create?
I want my work to show people a way of seeing the world that doesn't require us to always be up in arms against each other, that doesn't require us to be constantly competing, that can hold conflicting truths at the same time and still have some sense of balance, some sense of groundedness. And so I think that people can feel that through my work. Whatever they might take away from the story, I think it's a way of seeing that I'm trying to demonstrate, that I'm trying to model with these films so that people can take that same energy and apply it to whatever different situations that may be seeing. I think that's the power and the privilege of being a storyteller is we get to say, hey, this is one way you can imagine. This is a way that you can look, and I think, yeah, there's just something really magical about that.
I totally agree. To times 10. I couldn't agree anymore. So I know that you, and congratulations, have been accepted to UCLA's Masters in Fine Arts program. So what's next? What's that time frame? When do you leave Atlanta and go to LA, back to LA?
Yeah.
And
So it's June 22nd today. It's literally 3 weeks from when I'll be moving to LA
wow,
on July 15th. I'm thrilled about this. Like I said, I've always been someone who's touched all different types of mediums. So I've been doing still photography since 2017. I've always worked with my hands, building things, sculpting things. I was that theater kid. So you might see performance, you might see sculpture, you'll definitely see photos, visual art. I'm going to be in the interdisciplinary program at UCLA. So I think any filmmaker will tell you there's so much more that you want to say than what can fit in the edit. There's so much that gets left on the cutting room floor. There's so many ideas that you don't have the budget to play with visually. And so I feel like I've just been building up a lot of creative energy for other types of expression. And so this is me giving that an outlet. I'm launching my Substack actually this month. So people will be able to follow along
that's dope.
with my journey. And yeah, I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And what is it? It's a 3-year program for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
3 years something.
Are you going to be working on any like projects during it, meaning outside of the school, or you're like, no, I'm 100% in this program?
You know, it all depends. I'm working on a few projects now that I will be carrying into the first year at least. So yes, they are. But I'm just excited to see where this new chapter takes me, and I am open to prioritizing my education to the extent that it's possible.
It's good, really good. I'm excited for you and excited to watch the journey as well. So you have to remind me when you launch your Substack. My last question for you: what advice would you give to that seventh grade, eighth grade girl that left public school, pivoted into private school? What advice would you give her?
Ooh, what advice? And it's so funny because you sent me this list of questions. But this is the one I couldn't answer. Dang, because I get emotional thinking about myself at that time. Um, I think if I could give advice to my seventh, eighth grade self, I would just tell her like, enjoy yourself. Like, it's okay to enjoy yourself. It's safe to enjoy yourself. I think I really felt like the world was on my shoulders at that time. I was so mission driven, and I don't regret anything, but I think if I knew then what I know now, if I knew that things were going to work out, maybe I would have just taken some more time.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really good advice. I think, when we're kids, you don't know that like you're safe, you're fine, it's all gonna work out. Like you're okay. So that's great advice. And I really just appreciate your time and like again, I'm super like encouraged by all the like your art. That's really what it is, right? Like the art that you create and that you put out and that you work on. I'm excited to see what this program does for you. And where it elevates your game because like you've already, in my opinion, like achieved what most people will never achieve in their careers. So it's fascinating to see that you're still pursuing like the highest level or the next level of excellence. So thank you. Just thank you for your time. And I know that like your schedule is really hectic right now, getting ready to relocate across the country. But I just appreciate you.
Likewise, and I want to say one thing because I'm big on manifesting. It's a 3 year program. During my first year, I'm going to be carrying over some of the projects I'm working on now, including something I'm developing with Hulu. But for those second and third years of the program, I want to be totally focused on my artwork, totally focused on developing a new direction. And my plan is, now that I feel confident as a storyteller, to really hone in on visual language and create my personal style. And so hopefully around what's 3 years like 2028, nine, you'll be starting to see more of my fiction work and more of my film work that really is centering that visual storytelling.
That's dope. I didn't know you wanted to get into fiction. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Well,
Yeah.
that's it.
Well, thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it.
This was great.
Yeah,